going to see, and hopefully we can see this. Gosh, that's great. There are searching lines. You know what? I'm going to have to just show everybody via levels. All right, so when you scan in your things, believe me, it is here. You have other mess on your page. You've done your drawing, but you've been sort of sketching in things underneath. You've maybe got a blue line printout that you're working over. And the problem is you don't want your drawing, whether it be inked or whether it be in just type pencil like this is, you don't want it to be messy. So the trick for this is going to be doing a proper levels and a proper dodge and maybe a little burn to make sure everything looks nice, clean, and crisp.
So let's walk you through that process.
Right.
This is something we had to master early on because we don't like ink. We're not particularly good at it, and it takes a lot of time. However, we're pretty good with pencils, so we had to find a way of making our pencils look as dark and clean and crisp as ink.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my levels.
Levels is image adjustments levels. It's a nice little menu here that allows you to control how dark your darks are and how light your lights are.
Now, as I'm bringing my darks up, hopefully I'm going to bring them way up and you can sort of see some of the things I'm talking about. Do you see those blue lines underneath?
Yeah.
Do you see those little pencil lines that are there?
All the scribblies.
Right, there's a lot of scribblies. Like you can see whole other things, like this guy here. We can get
His
it.
mouth got moved down from where it was roughly sketched.
See that? We've got two mouths, one on top of the other. So we're trying to get rid of these lines. Like that's our goal at this point. So what we have to do when we do something like this is we have to bring in, we've got three sections here. We've got our darks, we've got our midtones, we've got our highlights.
So you were trying.
Right. And all you're trying to do is you bring your arrows into that information. See how you have these little hills and valleys? It's letting you know how many darks and how many lights and how many midtones you have. And if you're in an area way over here where you have 0 shadows, you probably have a problem.
So the first thing you're going to do when you bring levels up is at a minimum, bring your darks and lights triangles into where that information begins, to the base of one of those little numbers.
Now, we usually like to say the number of, say, 80 for my darks,
Right
my
above
shadows.
your level there, you can just punch in numbers. And while screens may change, and screen adjustments may make things look darker or lighter depending, I mean, this thing blows it out quite a bit, but those numbers will always be the same. And we found that starting at least with the base levels of 80, 1, and 229 will get you a good start. And then you can manually adjust it from there and see what works. What you're trying to make sure happens is that all of your whites are as white as they can be, all of your blacks are as black as they can be, but you don't want to go too far to the point where the line work starts breaking up. If you make the lights too light, then your blacks will start getting affected and they'll start cracking apart.
I'm trying currently to find a spot where it will show on the screen. I really want to show what dodge and burn looks like. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to quick do a crappy levels that you should never do so that I can show you what it is to do a dodge and burn. So crappy levels, way, way, way too dark. Never do this. I'm a terrible person. Should go to Illustrator, heck. All right.
So let's say your levels can't do enough. There's always going to be probably a little bit of dirt and smudge left on the page.
Man, there's always dirt and smudge on the page. I think I've cleaned it up and I get to the end and we've done all the color and I'm like,
And there's still more.
crap. You know what happens too is sometimes you miss it. Like there was a He-Man comic I was reading one day and I was looking at it. I'm like, there's the hand with the cup. And then right next to it, there's the sketch of the hand with the cup. Because nobody did a proper levels and a proper dodge to get that thing out of there. So you don't want to be that person with 2 hands and 2 cups. One is good enough. All right.
Unless you have a drinking problem.
Maybe that's what we were saying.
So
Maybe it was a metaphor.
after your levels, because because you don't want to adjust your lights too much and start breaking up your blacks, because you don't want to bring your blacks up too much and start cluttering up your whites and doing them up, you're going to find the best you can do with the least amount of schmutz left over.
So,
and then this is how you deal with the leftovers.
When I brush my dodge tool, which is
on
down
your
here.
tools palette, yeah, it's the little sucker.
Yeah, looks like a lollipop. I set it to highlights. I put my exposure at 20, and what you can see is it's not touching my darks. It's only touching, watch your face here. It's only touching my schmutz.
It makes light things lighter.
Magical Photoshop.
If you have it set to highlights, it is going to spot the lightest areas and make them continually lighter, which in this case will take the grays and turn them to white.
I'll be honest, if you guys want, I mean, this is, yes, Grandpa Photoshop here. But you can still do your color on Photoshop 7. That's how little Photoshop seriously changed since, you know, I think this came out in 1999.
There's a lot of bells and whistles they've added, neat little filter tricks and things, but basic coloring, there's a lot of professionals who still work on Photoshop 7.
If anybody knows mouse guard, David Peterson works on Photoshop 7. No, nobody does. That's a great comic. It's very fast, very, very fancy, very popular. And that guy,
now,
whatever.
you have to be careful with your dodge tool because it will start to break up your blacks if you are not.
Let's see if I can make this happen on my eye.
If you do it too much, then it's going to start causing the lighter sections of your black lines to continue to get as well.
It feels so bad.
And it gets all choppy and gross, and it just looks bad. You don't want to do that, so you're trying to have a light touch, do the least amount you have to get your whites as crisp as you can.
Hooray! Alright, well, once that's done, then what I do, I gotta find which is, that's not you, that's done. Shh. Oh, alright. Yay! Okay, so what we do, I'm not gonna show you this because it's not too hard, especially if you know anything about it.
It's a fairly simple process. When we do our drawing of our pages, we don't break up our page borders. We've got the lines drawn out to break up the page so we know where they'll be. But we wait until we scan it in and then digitally add the gutters afterward.
I'm too lazy to put them on.
Not only that, but drawing a straight line.
I don't want to. I get to that point, I'm like, no.
Drawing a straight line will never be as crisp and straight as just using the square marquee tool to give yourself a perfect box.
Right, and you can always put a stroke on things and stuff like that too if you want white in the background. We choose to do it this way with the black because we sort of like the movie feel for our black.
It helps the colors pop more.
Alright, you crazy kids, so here's what's happening. When you are all done and you've got your final page and it's all scanned in and you're ready, and it might not be a page, it could be a pinup, whatever. What you're doing is you're taking your background layer and you're dragging it down to the create new layer icon down here. It looks like a piece of paper with the corner folded. You let go and it copies it. And what you're going to do is you're going to call that sucker line art so you know what it is.
The reason she makes a copy is because Comfort is supremely cautious. As should we all be. There will always be that background layer of the original line art so that no matter what you may do on accident or on purpose, you will always be able to put that line art back.
Alright, I'm making another new layer here, and it's just a fresh one, and I'm going to call this Let's. Alright.
The flux layer is the basis of all digital color. This is what we will be using to select from and create everything we're going to do later.
I'm going to get my lasso tool. I'm going to make sure that anti-alias is checked off.
Anti-alias off. This is essential. Do not forget it.
Sure, yep. My mode is correct. I want to be coloring, and my mode is RGB, not CMYK, no matter how many people might tell you that.
Old printers used to have a really hard time. Old computers used to not be able to give you a decent preview of what the actual color.
Go back and look what color looked like in 1992.
Yeah, it's no longer necessary to color in CMYK. If you're super concerned, you can go to the View tab and turn on a CMYK preview that gives you an idea of how the color would look if it was CMYK. But coloring in CMYK is unnecessarily limiting to your digital palette.
All right, so I'm going to start my flats, and usually I would do something to my line art, but I'm going to wait because I want to show you guys magic. Oh my gosh. All right, so all I'm doing when I do flats, and honestly, flats take a long time. They're a lot of work. We have a lot of people who do flats for us because to do all the flats for your book, it's a major pain.
It is the longest, most boring part of the process, and yet it is the most important part of the process.
I can see Grandpa's having a hard time. He is really processing as I am. But what I'm doing is I am drawing along the black line. I can't do the whole thing because Grandpa is, there's my history. There we go. Because Grandpa is old and he's trying to process this. But what I'm doing is I'm drawing along my black line because what I want is the seams of my flats to be in the middle of these lines here. So I'm just quickly drawing this. I might not do the whole thing because you are Grandpa and you can only do so much and you're trying so hard. He's a sweet guy, Grandpa. He means well.
Comfort, if we open up the disk drive, do you think we'll have any bonus originals for us?
I know he will. I know he will. You know, I thought of this. I was watching Worthy's Originals commercial, and I was like, what if you hate your grandparents?
What if you hate your grandparents? That commercial plays entirely off of the nostalgia for smart people. What if your grandparent is like one of those bitter old racists? It's just awful.
One of those people that you're like, did people of your time say that?
Worthy's Originals is the hard candy that tastes like casual racism.
Smooth and creamy. Okay, well, I'm going to call that. Usually I do her full, face here. But we're not going to because... All right, so I'm going to go,
Bring up the foreground color and find yourself a good skin tone.
And I'm going to get my paint bucket tool. If it wants, there it is.
The paint bucket tool looks like paint.
I like to put my tolerance on 1 because I don't want anything seeing to another color.
The higher the tolerance, the more the paint bucket will overwrite other colors. The lower the tolerance, the less likely it is. So if you've got multiple tones that are kind of close to each other, and you've got a high tolerance, and you try to change the color of one, it'll change the color of both. If you've got a very low tolerance, then it's very, very picky about what it considers a single.
Pretty sneaky. All right, since it's 10:30 and we're getting close to running out of time. All right, I'm gonna click in this. Now it's gonna seem like nothing happened, but here's where my magic part comes. Going to my liner, going to normal, and I'm changing it. This is my layer mode, by the way. You can have all your layers in separate modes. You hit normal, you go down to a magic thing called multiply, and what that does is it makes all your whites transparent and all your darks opaque.
It turns your line art into a coloring book.
Now don't color on the line art layer.
And
Do all that on
touch
flats.
the line art layer until, you can colorize those lines at a later point, but when you're laying in your flats doing basic tone, you don't want to mess with the line art until you're...
Right. Now, when I just show flats here, if I turn this off, that's all my flats are right now. And you can see how it's got a stair-steppy thing on the side.
That's the anti-alias.
Right, being turned off. Anti-alias smooths things, which is great for when you're doing your actual tone, but you don't want it for your flats because you need everything to butt right up against each other. You don't want any white chunks or anything in between making it look ugly. All right, so very quickly, what the other great thing about doing flats is once you have one color, adding another color is simple because I can be really, really, really laissez-faire. I'm gonna try this again. Come on.
like we had said before with the paint bucket tool, once you've got that tolerance really low, it's not going to color over multiple tones. So if you select a large area, even through something that you've already done the flats on, clicking on the white area is not going to change the color.
Right. I have to be careful when I'm doing my hair here because there's no color to keep it out, but I'm going to hide this again. So I've got one area that's got color, I've got one area that doesn't. I go, I get a new color, boom, boom. I get my paint bucket tool again, I click and see how it stays out of that one color area. So once I have something down, it keeps everything else out unless I decide to click in it and fill it with
So
that.
flats tip, start with small interior objects and work outward from that. So that the further out you get, the less cautious you have to be about selecting specific objects.
Alright, now I am afraid that this is not going to take full tone. It's just not going to happen because it's barely doing flats. So we're just going to show people what tone it looks like. Now first of all, very quickly, the page itself, when it's all done, and I wish we could show you in layers, but Grandpa did not want to do that. When it's all done in layers, you have your tone, you've got your flats, your tone, your line art, and you have tons of effects. If you remember that initial page that you looked at, all this image was two standing figures here, face here, two standing figures, and a face.
The whole background was a generated effect that was built up later.
I am going to open the other page. All right. So let's take a look at a page that actually does have layers and see what goes into this. So like before, we start with our line art. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. But
Final flats when all done.
looks something like this.
Turn off the liner. It's just a big underpainting, is all it is. It's separating all of the different tones of the piece beforehand. And the reason that you want to have this is so that as you're going along coloring, at any time you can take your magic wand tool and you can click it on any of these areas.
If I'm on the correct layer.
If you're on the correct layer, which you'll get wrong often.
And it just selects it, like nothing.
Selects the entire space.
You can set it so that it selects.
Yes, if you turn contiguous off, then it will select every space of the same color on the entire page at once.
I hope I didn't break you, Grandpa.
Unless your computer's
There it is. Everything makes me nervous right now. So when your flats are done, what you're really doing is you're copying your flats, you bring it down just like I copied my line art with the create new layer button there, and I make my tone. I'm going to turn my line art back on so you can see. So you have your flats, you have all your tone. Do that again. Flat color, tone.
The other nice thing about flats is that it makes corrections much, much, much easier. So as you're going along, try and select the face on the tone layer.
Okay, so I'm going to try and select this guy on my tone layer. I'm going to turn contiguous on because I don't want it to select. Yeah. So I try and select something on his face.
And it would take forever.
Forever, and it would be choppy, and it would be ugly, and you would not like
It would be
it.
bad, it would be difficult.
But I go back to my flats, and boom! It all selects. It's amazing. As a matter of fact, somebody could say to me, "Oh, that guy had green skin, and I need it changed." And it's like,
Just go to
"Oh,
the
all
flats
right."
layer, select the skin again.
Go back to your tone.
Image
Use it.
adjustments, hue saturation, which is a wonderful little thing.
I'm like, "Oh, he had green skin. Wow, allow me." Green skin.
Now you're gonna have to pay me extra because I had to redo that.
It was so hard. Oh my gosh. Now, can you imagine doing this like in the olden days when somebody would be like, "You did this beautiful watercolor, but that guy's got green skin," and you're like, "Oh, I have to start over." No longer. Thank you, technology. So,
The flash layer eliminates the need for the billions of setup layers that a lot of people will use. Because rather than having to have one layer for every color, you've got one layer that's got all your colors separated. You select from that layer, go to your tone, and paint it there. And then you just work within those selections.
It
The
also-
selections prevent you from bleeding out into your other color areas, allow you to be as wild and sloppy as you want without messing things up. And it keeps your file size manageable.
absolutely.
In
And
case you're working on old computers.
or even new computers. You know, every single page of Rainbow in the Dark #9 was something like 200 megabytes, 300 megabytes. And when you're thinking of 58 pages, that's a lot. So do everything you can to keep it down, because you never know when you're going to have something that's just ridiculous. And the things that really take space are effects, which I'm going to start slowly putting on. So here's my page. Looks sort of normal. Oh, we got some cave light. Boom, boom. Put on some textures. Oh my gosh.
Water texture.
Did we see how that? Go back. No water? Water. Oh my gosh. Do we have dead or alive fans? Alright, so tone. I'm gonna make some skies. Watch the sky up here. I'm gonna do some snow and some foliage.
Yeah,
Wait.
these were all painted in as aftertimes. This way, in creating a layer over top of the line art, I could paint on all of the dangling
There's some
lines,
haze.
the
Watch
sediment,
this background
the
here.
snow.
Boom. It's lighter.
The haze creates an
Atmospheric
atmospheric perspective, so the things that are far away get softer and lighter in the distance. It helps create the feeling of depth.
Now we're going to put on light. All right, guys. So that's how a page goes. Now,
Let's show really quickly
really
how
quick, I want.
special
Can you do this, Grandpa? Work with me.
You can try.
You can try. Go. Oh, I know this. All right. Come on. Come on. Here we go.
So for special effects, you're going to use a layer mode called screen. Whereas with the line art, we use multiply, which means white, transparent, and black, opaque. Screen is the opposite. Black is transparent, white is opaque. And for our purposes, it's a lot like using a green screen in movies, only with black instead of green.
All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this dude's eyes glow, because now he is the devil. Yeah. So I'm going to fill this thing with black. Boom. Oh no, I've ruined it. No, I haven't.
Blackface is so offensive.
It's all right. I was watching one of those original commercials and it just. All right.
Convert to screen, the black square disappears. You will not see anything black. And you're going to paint your effects on with white. No
So
matter what color they'll be eventually, paint it on first with white. It gets you the most contrast between the bright light parts and the dark black parts.
all right. And what I'm doing is I'm giving him a nice core for his devil eyes. And these could be like, you know, happy power eyes too, but I'm gonna make them red.
What wants happy power?
My eyes go kittens. Actually, very quickly, nobody, that's Rush. It's totally Brian Adams. Nobody knows.
We wanted it
Nobody
to be,
understands.
We wanted it to be a panel in Canada, and I was like, how the hell are people going to know we're in Canada? Rush! I'll put Geddy Lee in it.
Not just that, I was like, put a moose in there.
Moose, yeah. Sorry, Canadians. We know you for two things.
Alright, I'm going to go to my hue saturation, which is under image adjustments, hue saturation. And I'm going to click on a magic thing called colorize.
Eyes.
I'm going to change my saturation, and now he's got devil eyes.
Brian Adams got a cut knife all through his face.
Alright, so
We can't stop
you
this
can,
when we start.
the thing is with hue saturation, like it just changes your color of
Yes.
things.
converts the black and white into full color. You slide your bars around, find what you like, and kaboom.
Right.
And we use this for everything from light beams of the sun coming in or moonlight rays. We use it for flecks of dust drifting through the air, like when you go into a musty room and there's a low haze, you can sort of see the dust motes drifting through. You can use screen layers for that too. Glowing eyes, fire, lightning, any kind of different effect that you can.
Atmospheric perspective, screen layers are a catch-all for
Yeah, when we
everything.
did the haze in the background, it's just a screen layer with a slight blue cast to it for the color of light in the
Alright.
atmosphere.
Honestly, we have Aiden, because Grandpa was so slow, we gotta go fast here, because we are now at about 10:45. I'm gonna pass this over to Adam.
And we're gonna talk about lettering.
I'm just gonna close Photoshop, if that's all right. No, screw you. We don't want you anymore. No. Goodbye. Adios, Photoshop. Now, I don't know how much time, again, I was hoping for more time for questions, but many things, I will say this right now as we pass it over to Adam, there's a lot of things that I can answer via the lands of emails and stuff like that, and I will have... Yep. And also, we are working on a how-to book for Random House, so if anybody wants to be like little testers, play testers for any of our how-tos, and you want to learn Illustrator or Photoshop things, just email me and I'll be like, can you do this? Can you follow this? And you will say yes, or this is crazy.
Okay, so let's talk a second about lettering, which is the forgotten art form, the most ignored art form that there is in comics. It is the most essential, frankly, because without the words, nobody talks. And silent books are interesting, but not everybody wants to read about Charlie Chaplin. So, if you want them to say something, you gotta put the words in their mouth. A good letterer, a letterer who strives for excellence, strives for anonymity. Your words must be a part of the page without standing out and punching people in the face.
Now, very quickly, do you want to do the iPad first? All right.
So let's talk
La, 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 la,
about
iPad.
iPath is the thing that lettering is most important for. And you might not know about this, so let's walk you through. iPath is an artist term for the way in which your eye moves across a page, a path that your eye takes as you look at the image. And you might have an artist who does crazy, stupid stuff with their pages. And so you have to make sure that the lettering controls how the viewer reads the page.
We are artists, and we still do crazy, stupid stuff sometimes. And like this page, we got done with it, and we're like, uh-oh.
Wonderful, I've wrecked up my day. Because if you look, this big, strong vertical or diagonal line here, straight lines are the most powerful thing known to man. When your eye sees a straight line, it latches onto it and wants to follow that. Diagonal lines, even more so, because they're dynamic, they're at an angle, stuff's gonna fall over. So when you've got this big diagonal line here, if I start in this top panel, my eye's just gonna follow that diagonal line straight down to this panel, and I'm gonna skip a whole piece of the page.
That is bad.
So the lettering has to keep that from happening. You get a page like this, and you're thinking, what can I do? Always remember, we read from top to bottom, from left to right.
I'm sorry that you grew up with manga, but if any, and honestly too, I love Naruto, I love the Death Notes and whatever, but the lettering in there, because it's done for another language and we're just writing over top, is terrible.
It's terrible.
It's horrid.
Never look at manga as an example of how to
Right.
write.
Half the time they're covering up some dude's head that's talking. I'm like,
Right.
oh.
You can see their shoulder, and you're like, oh.
Is that
I think
Sasuke?
that's it.
No.
Well, who else would wear a shirt so open?
I could always tell it was Sai. I was like, there's his belly. Who else was that?
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so here's what we did here. You start in the top left corner. If you can put something in the top left corner, that's always good, because your reader's going to look there first and you've locked their eye. And we follow along through the girl here to this next piece of dialogue. And because this bubble here is so close, the eye is going to catch it and follow the line through. And then this text will move across here with the tail pointing to her as the speaker, but then you're pulled back down on this diagonal to the actual next panel.
Right. So we're avoiding that crazy diagonal.
We follow the text through, this bubble breaks through the barrier to point you to the next panel so you don't accidentally read straight down and skip this panel. Follow through to her eyes. The eye will always, the eye of the human watcher will always follow the direction of the eyes of people in a drawing or in a painting or whatever. You'll notice this now that I've told you. Next time you look at a picture with somebody in it, and your eye will naturally sort of follow like where they're looking at. In her case, the eyes are pointing downward through the explosion towards the next place we want you to be. Read the dialogue across through her eyes again to this guy, down to the bottom, and then left to right, and catch the gun and leave the page.
And you thought it was just words on a page, you silly people.
Lettering is highly valuable to the final process, and you cannot discount how much power the lettering has. Nothing will make a good book look cheap or poorly done faster than amateurish lettering. So let's talk about how you do it. We've got this page right here.
Right, and we use industry standards, Photoshop and Illustrator, but GIMP has versions
Yes.
of these, and they're pretty decent. They're getting closer and closer to being better. Manga Studio is actually very good. You can find things other than the Adobe products, but you personally just happen to use them.
However, I would say that while there are now a lot of quality alternatives for coloring pages, there is still no alternative to lettering. Illustrator is the best. There are other programs that do it, but nothing gives you the power or the flexibility or the ability to control what you're doing like Illustrator.
Manga Studio, again, is very, I would say Manga Studio is closest with most of its stuff.
So, what we have here is we'll have a page, the page in the center, and we will paste in the text for that page on the side. So we'll always have a handy reference of what is going to be said throughout.
There are times too that I'm getting corrections from our editors, and I'll have, this editor, this editor, this editor, side by side.
And we can compare their notes and see where corrections might need to be made. This is why we like being able to letter our pages ourselves, because we wrote the book, and now we get to look at the corrections and look at the page and decide how we're going to fix this dialogue to the best to address the problems while we're doing the initial letter. So let's take this beauty in here and just keep reviewing. And we'll start from scratch. I have a bunch of stray extra balloons sitting along the side, so I can grab this, copy it, and paste it in. I've always got my balloons ready. I don't have to recreate them every time. And I'm going to paste in balloons that give me a sense of, I've got this much to say in panel 1. How many balloons do I think this is going to take? I'll do it in, let's say, 3. And I'll arrange these where I think I want them to be.
Now, very quickly, these balloons are actually things that we've made, and they're a little bit more square than
This
your
is
actual
true.
circles.
You don't want it to be a perfect oval because a slightly squared oval is going to fit text better. So you're never going to just take the ellipse tool and create a perfect oval. It's not going to look very good. You're going to want to adjust those corners and get something slightly squarish. But that's the beauty of keeping copies on the side. Once you have a good one, you will always have the good one and not have to mess with it again. So I've got my stuff in place here. My bubbles are set. I select them all, I copy it. I would do this for the whole page at once if I had it. And I'll hit Control F, which pastes a duplicate directly on top of what I copied.
And the reason that you paste a duplicate directly on top of the copy is because you're going to be pasting your text right into a circular bubble rather than a square.
I select the text for this bubble, I copy it, and then I move my cursor over, and when you see the square of the cursor turn into a circle, I click that, and the duplicated bubble becomes the bounding box for the text, so that the text and the bubble are always perfectly identical. Now, I will move in here, and I will adjust the size of this oval to try and get the best grouping of the text. Sometimes you'll have to force letters down or words down. You're looking for something that's going to be about an oval shape, so that you can then shrink this, tighten this up, so that it's equal on all sides, approximately centered, and boom, lettering done. You want to put a tail on it, grab your little pen, it's right next to the text tool. Make sure you click on the bubble first in a way so that your tail will have the identical color and thickness of stroke as the bubble you're attaching it to.
The stroke is the outline.
It's how
on
thick
bubble.
the outline.
So the fill is your white, the stroke is how thick the line is around it.
You'll click inside the bubble towards the mouth of the speaker. The tail of the bubble will always point towards the mouth of who's talking. Go about halfway in between, click and drag.
And you can see how that line is curving when
Yeah.
that clicks and drags.
Click at the tip of the tail, and that closes it off, so that when I click away, it's not trying to complete a curve. Click on the tip, and then click back up here. Click and drag, so that you can match. And you can use the white arrow tool to grab just this point and adjust it, moving it around, and adjust these tails a little bit. Sorry,
Come on, Grandma. We can do it.
there you are.
Teamwork.
Grab that again, smooth it out. You want it to be a pretty even curve all the way. You want to have, see how it sort of forms a black point here? You want to minimize that as much as you can. There's only so much you can do. As much as you can, that's how you want it. Now, say we want these two bubbles to connect. You're just going to do the same thing, but starting at the base bubble, pointing up towards the top of whichever bubble is closest to the speaker. Start here, draw a point in the center of the bubble you want it to connect to. And you're just going to make the connecting tail.
Alright.
When you've got them set, select only the bubble and tails that you're wanting to join. We'll go over here so you can see that you then have to deselect. Shift, hold down Shift and click on the text to get it out of there. You've got your Pathfinder down here if not, you can call it out through the window. And this first little conjoined square here will merge them together. Control bracket to send it back in space underneath, and you've got to talk.
Voila. Lettering.
Do not. It is going to be tempting when you've got the page full of these things. It's going to be tempting to want to select all of your bubbles at once and merge them all at once. Don't do it, because all of your bubbles and tails will become a singular object. Right now, if I wanted to make adjustments, if I change the text for some reason, I need the bubble to get bigger, I can take a white arrow, click on just the bubble, and then switch to my black arrow and adjust it, independently of that tail. The tail will stay the same, but this doesn't. If I want to grab the whole thing, I can just click and drag. Now, if all of these were conjoined in a singular shape, then anytime I wanted to move this bubble, I would have to individually select it and deselect everything else and slowly move it. You think you're saving time, but you're costing yourself time in the long run.
So much like flats, you might want to just get to the tone.
Don't do
But
it.
you know what?
Don't do it.
It's just going to be faster.
We are just about out of time, so there are some things we're sadly not going to be able to get to. We apologize for the technical problems we had setting this up. Hopefully this is still enough to get you started with what is important.
If you guys do not have our email or our website or anything like that, come see us in Artist Alley. We are at
Table
table.
AA 2 and 3. When you're coming in against the back wall by the restrooms, you'll see a giant sign on the wall says restrooms, and then a giant boot sign panties. Potties, panties,
That's us.